The cold November wind cut through Riley's thin jacket like a knife. She pulled it tighter around herself, knowing it wouldn't help much. This was her third night sleeping on the streets, and she still hadn't gotten used to the cold. Every bone in her body ached, and her stomach had been growling for hours. She was only 17 years old, but right now she felt about 100. Just 3 weeks ago, Riley had a roof over her head. It wasn't perfect. Nothing about the foster care system ever was. But at least she had a bed and regular meals. Then she turned 17 and everything changed. The group home said they needed her spot for younger kids. They gave her a backpack, $75, and an address for a youth shelter that turned out to be full. Now here she was, living under a bridge in downtown Portland with people 3 times her age. The other homeless folks had been kind enough, showing her the safer spots to sleep and warning her about which areas to avoid after dark. An older woman named Betty had given her an extra blanket and told her to always keep her shoes on even while sleeping. "You never know when you might need to run," Betty had said. Riley hadn't understood it at first, but she did now. Every night was a gamble. Every sound made her jump. Every shadow could be a threat. She barely slept anymore, just dozed off in short bursts, always with one eye half open. Tonight was especially cold. Her breath came out in white puffs, and she could barely feel her fingers anymore. She'd spent the day sitting outside a coffee shop with a cardboard sign, hoping people would spare some change. She'd made about $12, enough for a cheap meal, but she needed to save it. Food was getting harder to come by. As the sky grew darker, Riley knew she needed to find something to eat before everything closed. There was a grocery store about 6 blocks away that threw out their expired food around 9 o'clock. If she was lucky, she might find some bread or fruit that was still good. She made her way through the quiet streets, keeping to the shadows. She'd learned quickly that being visible meant being vulnerable. The less people noticed her, the safer she was. The grocery store's back alley was dimly lit, with just one flickering light above the loading dock. Riley had been here twice before, and both times she'd found decent food in the dumpster. She knew it sounded awful, eating from the trash, but when you're hungry enough, pride disappears pretty quickly. She approached the large green dumpster and lifted the heavy lid. The smell hit her immediately, but she'd gotten used to it. She climbed up on the side and leaned in, using her phone's flashlight to see better. There were some bags of bread on top, only one day past their sell-by date. Score. She grabbed the bread and was about to climb down when she heard something that made her freeze completely. A cry. A baby's cry. At first, Riley thought she was imagining it. Maybe the cold was getting to her head, or maybe she was just exhausted. But then she heard it again, louder this time, more desperate. It was definitely a baby, and it was close by. Her heart started pounding. She dropped the bread back into the dumpster and jumped down, following the sound. It was coming from near the loading dock, behind some old pallets and boxes. "Hello?" Riley called out, her voice shaky. "Is someone there?" The crying got louder. She moved faster now, pushing aside cardboard boxes and old crates. And then she saw it. A cardboard box, slightly bigger than a shoebox, with a dirty towel draped over the top. Riley's hands trembled as she lifted the towel. Inside was a baby. A real living baby. "Oh my God," she whispered, her breath catching in her throat. The infant was tiny, probably just days old. Its face was red from crying, and its little lips had a blue tint that Riley knew wasn't right. The baby was wrapped in what looked like an old t-shirt, and there was nothing else in the box, no blanket, no bottle, no note. Nothing. Someone had left this baby here to die. Riley's mind raced. She looked around frantically, hoping to see someone, anyone who might have just stepped away for a moment. But the alley was empty except for her and this crying baby. She'd never held a baby before, never even been around one. But something inside her just took over. She reached into the box and carefully lifted the infant, cradling it against her chest. The baby was so cold, way too cold. "It's okay," Riley heard herself saying, even though nothing about this was okay. "It's okay, I've got you." The baby's cries weakened to small whimpers, and that scared Riley even more. She quickly unzipped her jacket and tucked the infant inside against her body, zipping it back up as much as she could. The baby needed warmth, and it needed it fast. Her own jacket, the only warm thing she owned, but there wasn't even a question in her mind. Riley knew she couldn't handle this alone. This baby needed real help, medical help. She tried to remember where the nearest hospital was, but her mind was blank with panic. Then she thought of the diner. There was a 24-hour diner about 2 blocks away. They'd have a phone and they'd know what to do. She started running. The baby bounced slightly against her chest with each step, and Riley tried to run as smoothly as she could. Her lungs burned in the cold air, and her legs felt like they might give out, but she didn't slow down. She couldn't. "Hang on," she kept whispering to the baby. "Just hang on. We're almost there." People on the street stared at her as she ran past. A teenage girl with wild eyes and a crying baby barely visible inside her jacket. But Riley didn't care what they thought. Nothing mattered except getting this baby help. The diner's bright lights felt like salvation. Riley burst through the door and every head turned to look at her. She must have looked crazy. Sweaty, breathless, her hair a mess, wearing a jacket that was now bulging with a baby. "Please," she gasped, looking at the waitress behind the counter. "Please, I need help. There's a baby. I found a baby." The waitress, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes, immediately came around the counter. "Honey, what's going on?" Riley carefully unzipped her jacket, revealing the tiny infant. The baby had stopped crying now, which somehow seemed worse than the crying. "I found her behind the grocery store," Riley explained, the words tumbling out fast. "In a box. She's so cold. I think something's really wrong." The waitress's face went pale. "Oh, sweet Jesus." She turned and shouted to someone in the back. "Call 911 now. Tell them we have an abandoned baby." Everything happened fast after that. The cook brought out clean towels and they wrapped the baby up while they waited. The waitress tried to get Riley to sit down, but she couldn't. She just stood there staring at the baby, making sure it was still breathing. "You did good," the waitress kept saying. "You probably saved this baby's life." Riley didn't feel like a hero. She just felt scared and cold and overwhelmed. When the ambulance arrived 6 minutes later, the paramedics moved quickly. They checked the baby's vital signs and asked Riley questions she didn't know how to answer. How long had the baby been outside? She didn't know. Was there anyone else with the baby? "No, just the box. We need to get her to the hospital immediately," one paramedic said. "Are you coming with us?" Riley looked down at herself. Her dirty clothes, her worn-out shoes, the fact that she was homeless and had nothing to offer. "Can I?" "You found her," the paramedic said gently. "The police will want to talk to you anyway. Come on." As Riley climbed into the back of the ambulance, still not quite believing any of this was real, she looked down at the baby in the paramedic's arms. The infant's eyes were closed now, and she looked so small and fragile. Riley didn't know what would happen next. She didn't know if this baby would be okay or if she'd gotten there in time. All she knew was that her life had just changed in a way she couldn't even begin to understand. The ambulance doors closed, and they sped off into the night, sirens wailing. And Riley, who had nothing, no home, no family, no future she could see, suddenly had something she'd never expected. She had a purpose. The hospital emergency room was the brightest place Riley had been in weeks. The fluorescent lights made her squint, and the warmth inside made her realize just how frozen she'd been outside. She sat in a plastic chair in the waiting area, watching as doctors and nurses rushed the baby through double doors that she wasn't allowed to pass. A nurse had given her a blanket and a cup of hot chocolate. Riley wrapped both hands around the cup, feeling the warmth seep back into her fingers. It hurt a little as they thawed out, but it was a good kind of hurt. It meant she could still feel things. She couldn't stop shaking, though. Whether it was from the cold or the adrenaline or just the shock of everything that had happened, she didn't know. "Miss." A police officer sat down in the chair next to her. He was young, maybe in his late 20s, with a kind face. "I'm Officer Davis. I need to ask you some questions about what happened tonight." Riley nodded, setting down her hot chocolate. "Okay, can you tell me your name?" "Riley Brooks." "And how old are you, Riley?" 17. The officer wrote something in his notepad. "Can you walk me through exactly what happened?" "Start from the beginning." Riley took a breath and told him everything. About looking for food in the dumpster, about hearing the baby cry, about finding her in that cardboard box behind the loading dock. She described the box, the dirty towel, the way the baby's lips had been blue. "You did the right thing," Officer Davis said when she finished. "You got her help fast. That's what mattered." "Is she going to be okay?" Riley asked. It was the question that had been eating at her since they'd arrived. "The doctors are with her now. They'll do everything they can." He paused. Riley, I need to ask, where are your parents? Is there someone we can call? This was the part Riley had been dreading. She looked down at her hands. I don't have parents. I'm in foster care. Well, I was. I aged out of my last placement a few weeks ago. The officer's expression changed, softened. Where are you staying now? Riley hesitated. She could lie, but what was the point? Nowhere. I've been on the streets for about 3 weeks. Officer Davis was quiet for a moment. Then he nodded slowly, like he was putting pieces together. You gave the baby your jacket. It wasn't a question, but Riley answered anyway. She was so cold. That jacket, that was probably the only warm thing you had, wasn't it? Riley shrugged. She needed it more than me. The officer looked at her for a long moment, and Riley couldn't quite read his expression. Then he stood up. Wait here. I'll be right back. He disappeared through another set of doors, and Riley was left alone with her thoughts. She wondered if she was in trouble somehow. Maybe they thought she had something to do with abandoning the baby. The thought made her stomach twist. About 15 minutes later, a woman in business casual clothes approached her. She had short black hair and glasses, and she carried a tablet and a large tote bag. Riley, I'm Linda Chen. I'm a social worker with Child Protective Services. She sat down next to Riley and offered a warm smile. Officer Davis told me what you did tonight. That was incredibly brave. I just did what anyone would do, Riley said quietly. I wish that were true, Linda said. But it's not. A lot of people would have walked away. You didn't? She opened her tablet. The doctors say the baby is going to be okay thanks to you. She has hypothermia and she's dehydrated, but she's stable now. If you'd found her even an hour later. She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't have to. Riley felt something tight in her chest release just a little. Can I see her? In a bit. They're still running tests and getting her temperature back up. But yes, I'll make sure you can see her. Linda tapped on her tablet. Right now, I need to talk to you about your situation. Officer Davis said you're currently unhoused? Riley nodded. There was no point in hiding it. How long have you been on the streets? 3 weeks, give or take. I turned 17 and my group home needed my bed for younger kids. They gave me some information about shelters, but they were all full. I've been trying to figure things out on my own. Linda's face tightened with concern. Have you tried the Morrison Youth Center? They specifically work with teenagers aging out of foster care. I didn't know about it, Riley admitted. Linda pulled out her phone and made a call right there. Riley listened as she explained the situation to whoever was on the other end. When she hung up, she looked relieved. Good news. They have a bed available for you tonight. It's a warm place, safe, and they have counselors who can help you get connected with resources. She reached into her tote bag and pulled out a sandwich, an apple, and a bottle of water. I grabbed these from the cafeteria. When's the last time you ate? Riley couldn't remember. Yesterday, I think. Maybe this morning. I don't know. Eat, Linda said gently, handing her the food. Riley unwrapped the sandwich with shaking hands. It was just turkey and cheese, but it tasted like the best thing she'd ever eaten. She tried to eat slowly, but she was so hungry that she finished it in less than 2 minutes. Linda watched her without judgment. There's more if you need it. This is good. Thank you. They sat in silence for a few minutes while Riley ate the apple. Then Linda spoke again. Riley, can I ask you something? Why did you keep checking on the baby? Officer Davis said you refused to leave until you knew she was stable. Riley thought about it. I don't know. I needed to make sure she was okay. She was all alone in that box. Nobody wanted her. I know what that feels like. Linda's eyes got a little misty behind her glasses. You felt unwanted? I've been in 7 different foster homes since I was 9, Riley said. Some were okay. Most weren't, but none of them were permanent. Nobody ever wanted to keep me. I was just taking up space until they could get someone better. That must have been really hard. Riley shrugged. She'd learned a long time ago not to think about it too much. Thinking about it hurt. A nurse came out through the double doors and looked around the waiting room. Is there a Riley here? Riley stood up quickly. That's me. The baby's stable now. Would you like to see her? Just for a few minutes, would she ever? Riley followed the nurse through the doors with Linda right behind her. They walked down a hallway and into a room where the baby was lying in what looked like a special heated bed. She was hooked up to various monitors and she had a tiny IV in her arm. But she was breathing. Her chest rose and fell steadily, and her skin looked pink and healthy instead of that awful blue color. She's beautiful, Riley whispered, stepping closer. The nurse smiled. She's a fighter, that's for sure. Doctor said another hour and we might have been too late. You saved her life. Riley reached out and gently touched the baby's tiny hand. The infant's fingers curled slightly at her touch and Riley felt tears spring to her eyes. She blinked them back quickly. Do you know anything about her mother? Riley asked. Or who left her there? The nurse shook her head. The police are investigating. But right now she's just Baby Doe. No name, no family we know of. She needs a name, Riley said softly. Baby Doe sounds so sad. Linda stepped up beside her. The foster family who takes her will probably give her one. Foster family? Riley turned to look at her. She'll need somewhere to go once she's released from the hospital. We'll place her with an emergency foster family who specializes in infants. She'll be well taken care of. Riley looked back at the baby. Another kid going into the system. Another kid who'd bounce around from home to home, never quite belonging anywhere. Just like Riley had. Riley hesitated. Can I come visit her? While she's here? Linda and the nurse exchanged glances. Finally, Linda nodded. I think we can arrange that. You did save her life after all. I'm sure the hospital won't mind if you stop by. Riley spent another 10 minutes just watching the baby sleep. She looked so peaceful now, so different from the terrified, cold infant she'd found in that alley. It was hard to believe this was the same baby. Finally, the nurse said she needed to rest and Riley had to leave. She said goodbye to the baby, which felt silly, since the baby couldn't hear her, and followed Linda back out to the waiting room. I called for a ride to take you to Morrison Youth Center, Linda said, gathering her things. It should be here in about 10 minutes. She pulled out a business card and handed it to Riley. This has my direct number on it. If you need anything, and I mean anything, you call me, okay? Riley took the card, holding it carefully like it might disappear. Okay, and Riley? Linda put a hand on her shoulder. What you did tonight matters. You matter. Don't ever forget that. Something in Riley's chest cracked a little at those words. When was the last time someone had told her she mattered? The ride to the youth center was quiet. Riley stared out the window at the dark streets she'd been sleeping on just hours ago. Everything felt different now, like the world had shifted somehow. The Morrison Youth Center was a large brick building with warm lights in the windows. A counselor named Mr. Peterson greeted her at the door with a kind smile and showed her to a small but clean room with a real bed, real sheets, and a real pillow. Bathrooms down the hall, he said. We have breakfast at 7, and then we can talk about what comes next. Get some sleep, Riley. You're safe here. After he left, Riley just stood in the middle of the room, not quite believing it was real. A bed. An actual bed with a mattress and everything. She locked the door, kicked off her shoes, and climbed under the covers fully clothed. The sheet smelled like laundry detergent, and the pillow was soft under her head. For the first time in 3 weeks, Riley felt warm as she drifted off to sleep. Her last thought was of that tiny baby in the hospital, alone but alive, unwanted by whoever left her in that box, but not unwanted by everyone. Riley might not have much, but she'd given that baby a chance. And maybe, just maybe, that baby had given her one too. Riley woke up to sunlight streaming through a real window. For a moment, she forgot where she was. Then it all came flooding back, the baby, the hospital, the youth center. She sat up and looked around the small room, half expecting it to have been a dream. But no, it was real. She was actually in a bed in a safe place. Her phone said it was 6:30 in the morning. She'd slept for almost 7 hours straight. She couldn't remember the last time that had happened. After washing up in the bathroom down the hall, her first real shower in weeks, Riley made her way downstairs. The smell of breakfast made her stomach growl loudly. In the dining area, about a dozen other teenagers sat at tables eating and talking quietly. Mr. Peterson spotted her and waved her over to the food line. Good morning, Riley. Help yourself. We've got eggs, toast, fruit, cereal. Whatever you want, whatever she wanted. Riley filled her plate, trying not to take too much, even though she wanted to take everything. Old habits from foster care. Never seem too greedy, never ask for too much. She sat at an empty table and ate slowly, savoring every bite. Some of the other teens glanced at her curiously, but no one bothered her. Everyone here probably had their own story, their own struggles. After breakfast, Mr. Peterson brought her to his office. It was a small room with a desk, 2 chairs, and walls covered in resource posters and motivational quotes. So, he said, sitting down across from her. Linda Chen told me about what happened last night. That was something really special, what you did. Riley shifted uncomfortably. I just helped a baby. You saved a baby's life while you were homeless and hungry yourself. That's not just helping Riley, that's heroic. He opened a folder on his desk. Now let's talk about you. Linda sent over your file. You're 17. You've been in foster care since you were 9 and you recently aged out of your last placement. Is that right? Yeah. What are your plans? Do you want to finish high school? Go to college? Learn a trade? Riley hadn't thought much about the future lately. She'd been too focused on surviving each day. I want to finish school. I was doing okay before everything fell apart. I had mostly B's and C's. That's great. We can get you enrolled in our GED program. It's more flexible than traditional school and you can work at your own pace. He pulled out some papers. We also help with job placement, life skills training, and finding permanent housing. You can stay here for up to 6 months while you get on your feet. 6 months. It sounded like forever and no time at all. They spent the next hour filling out paperwork and making plans. Riley would start her GED classes next week. She'd meet with a counselor twice a week. She'd learn how to budget money, cook meals, and look for jobs. When they finished, Riley asked the question that had been on her mind since she woke up. Can I go see the baby today? Mr. Peterson smiled. I thought you might ask that. Linda said she'd pick you up at 11 and take you to the hospital. The morning dragged by. Riley tried to focus on the orientation packet Mr. Peterson had given her, but her mind kept wandering back to that tiny baby in the hospital bed. Linda arrived right on time, and they drove to the hospital together. On the way, Linda filled her in on what she'd learned. The police tracked down the baby's mother, Linda said carefully. She's 19 years old. Her name is Ashley, and she's been struggling with addiction. She was living on the streets too when she had the baby. She's agreed to surrender her parental rights. Riley's chest tightened. So what happens to the baby now? She'll go into foster care once she's medically cleared. We're looking for an emergency placement, someone who specializes in newborns and infants. Linda glanced at Riley. It's a good system. She'll be taken care of. Riley wanted to believe that. She really did. But she knew too much about the foster care system to fully trust it. At the hospital, they went straight to the baby's room. She was still in the same heated bed, but she looked stronger somehow. Her cheeks were pinker and she was making little cooing sounds. She's doing much better, the nurse told them. Temperature's back to normal and she's taking her bottle well. We'll probably discharge her in a day or two. Riley approached the bed slowly. Can I hold her? The nurse hesitated, then looked at Linda, who nodded. Just for a few minutes. And be careful with the IV line. The nurse showed Riley how to support the baby's head and neck. Then she carefully lifted the infant and placed her in Riley's arms. The baby was so light, so tiny. She fit perfectly in the crook of Riley's elbow. Her eyes were closed and she made little sucking motions with her mouth even though she wasn't eating. Hi there, Riley whispered. Remember me? I'm the one who found you. The baby's eyes fluttered open. They were dark blue, though the nurse said all babies' eyes started out that way. She looked right at Riley, and Riley felt something shift inside her chest. This wasn't just any baby. This was her baby. Not biologically, obviously, but in some way that mattered more than biology. She'd saved this baby's life. She'd given up her only jacket to keep her warm. She'd run through the streets carrying her. That had to mean something, right? She seems calm with you, the nurse observed. Earlier she was fussy, but she settled right down when you picked her up. Riley looked down at the baby in her arms. You need a real name. Baby Doe isn't good enough for you. What would you name her? Linda asked softly. Riley thought about it. About finding this baby when she had nothing. About how this tiny life had somehow given her a reason to keep going when she'd been ready to give up. Hope, Riley said. I'd name her Hope. Linda wrote something in her notebook, and Riley saw her eyes get a little misty again. They stayed for an hour. Riley held Hope the whole time, only giving her back when she needed to be fed. She watched as the nurse bottle-fed her, noting how the baby drank eagerly now. She was a fighter, this one. On the drive back to the youth center, Linda was quiet for a while. Then she said, Riley, can I ask you something? And I want you to be completely honest with me. Okay. Have you thought about what it would be like if you could take care of Hope yourself? Riley's heart skipped. What do you mean? I mean, have you thought about fostering her? Being her foster mother? Riley stared at Linda. I'm 17. I'm homeless. Well, I was homeless until yesterday. I don't have a job or money or anything. How could I possibly take care of a baby? You'd have support, Linda said. There are programs specifically for young mothers in your situation. Transitional housing where you could live with hope. Financial assistance. Parenting classes. Job training. It wouldn't be easy, but it's possible. Riley's mind was racing. Take care of Hope herself? Become a mother at 17? It was crazy. It was impossible. It was everything she'd never let herself dream about. Why would you even suggest that? Riley asked. I'm just a kid myself. Linda pulled into the youth center parking lot and turned to face Riley. I've been a social worker for 18 years. I've seen thousands of placements, good and bad. And you know what I've learned? Love matters more than age or money or perfect circumstances. That baby responds to you, Riley. She knows you saved her. And when you hold her, I see something in your face that I don't see often enough in this job. What? Riley whispered. Hope, Linda said simply. You look at her like she's given you hope. And I think maybe you've given her hope too. That's not something you can fake or train someone to do. That's real. Riley felt tears prick her eyes. But I don't know how to be a mom. I never had one, not a real one. What if I mess everything up? Then you'll learn, same as every other parent in the world. Nobody knows what they're doing at first. Linda handed Riley a tissue. I'm not saying you have to decide right now. Think about it. Meanwhile, get settled at Morrison. Start your classes. Visit Hope. See how you feel in a week or two. That night, Riley lay in bed thinking about Linda's words. Could she really do this? Could a homeless teenager become a mother? The smart answer was no. The logical answer was no. Every rational part of her brain screamed no. But when she closed her eyes, all she could see was Hope's tiny face looking up at her. All she could feel was that weight in her arms, that sense of purpose she'd felt. She'd spent her whole life feeling unwanted and unnecessary. But when she held Hope, she felt needed, important, like she mattered. Over the next week, Riley fell into a routine. She started her GED classes in the morning, attended counselor sessions in the afternoon, and visited Hope at the hospital every evening. Linda always arranged the transportation, never making Riley feel like she was being a burden. Hope was getting stronger every day. She'd gained weight, her color was perfect, and she was alert and responsive. The nurses all knew Riley by name now, and they always smiled when she arrived. There's the baby whisperer, one nurse would joke, because it was true. Hope always calmed down when Riley held her. On Thursday afternoon, Linda came to the youth center with news. Hope is being discharged tomorrow. We've found a foster placement for her, a family who's fostered several infants. They're good people. Riley felt like she'd been punched in the stomach. She knew this was coming. She knew Hope would have to leave the hospital eventually, but knowing and feeling were two different things. Okay, she managed to say. You can still visit her, Linda said gently. The foster family's open to it, but it wouldn't be the same. Riley knew that. Once Hope left the hospital, she'd become someone else's responsibility. Someone else would feed her and change her and hold her when she cried. That night, Riley couldn't sleep. She stared at the ceiling, thinking about Hope going to strangers. Good people, Linda had said, but strangers nonetheless. People who hadn't found her in an alley. People who hadn't given up their only jacket. People who didn't know what it felt like to be abandoned. Around midnight, Riley made a decision. It was crazy. It was terrifying. It was probably the most impulsive thing she'd ever done, but she knew deep in her bones that it was right. She got out of bed, found Linda's business card, and sent her a text. I want to do it. I want to foster Hope. I don't know how, and I'm scared, but I want to try. Please tell me what I need to do. She hit send before she could change her mind. 3 minutes later, her phone buzzed with a reply. I was hoping you'd say that. Come to my office tomorrow at 9 a.m. We have a lot of work to do, but Riley, I believe you can do this. Sleep well. Riley put down her phone and pulled the covers up to her chin. For the first time since she was 9 years old, she felt like she was exactly where she was supposed to be. Not because life was easy, not because everything was figured out, but because she had something worth fighting for. Linda's office was on the 3rd floor of a government building downtown. Riley sat in the waiting room, her leg bouncing nervously. She'd barely slept after sending that text, her mind racing with everything that could go wrong. What if they laughed at her? What if they said no? What if she wasn't good enough? Riley? Linda opened her door with a warm smile. Come on in. The office was small but cozy, with photos of kids on the walls, probably foster children Linda had helped over the years. Riley sat in the chair across from Linda's desk, feeling like she might throw up. First things first, Linda said, pulling out a thick folder. What you're asking to do is not easy. The process is intensive and there are a lot of requirements. But I want you to know that I'm on your side. I'm going to help you through every step. Riley nodded, not trusting herself to speak. Okay, here's what we need. Number 1, stable housing. The Morrison Youth Center is great, but you can't foster a baby there. We need to get you into a transitional living program specifically for young mothers. I've already made some calls and there's a place called New Beginnings that has an opening. It's an apartment building where young mothers live independently, but with support staff available 24/7. An apartment? My own apartment? Riley couldn't believe it. Well, you'd have a roommate, another young mother, but yes, your own bedroom. Kitchen, living room, everything you need. The rent is subsidized based on your income, which right now is 0, so you'd pay nothing until you get a job. Riley's head was spinning, and they'd let me bring Hope there. That's literally what the program is for. Mothers and babies. Linda checked her notes. Number 2, income. You need a job, not necessarily full-time, but you need to show that you can support yourself and contribute to Hope's care. The state provides foster care payments, but you still need your own income. What kind of job could I get? I don't have any experience and I dropped out of high school. We'll work on that. The youth center has job training programs, and there are employers who specifically hire young people in your situation. Nothing glamorous at first, probably retail or food service, but it's a start. Linda made a note. Number 3, parenting classes. You need to complete an intensive parenting course. It's 8 weeks, twice a week, covers everything from diaper changes to infant CPR. I can do that, Riley said quickly. Number 4, home study. A social worker will inspect your apartment, interview you, check references, do a background check. They'll want to make sure you can provide a safe, stable environment. Riley's confidence wavered. What if I mess up the inspection? Then we'll fix whatever needs fixing and try again. Riley, nobody expects perfection. They just want to see that you're trying and that you genuinely care about Hope's well-being. Linda leaned forward. And number 5, this is the hardest one. You need to prove you can handle the responsibility. That means showing up to every appointment, every class, every home visit. It means putting Hope's needs before your own wants. It means growing up really fast. Riley thought about the past 3 weeks on the streets. She'd survived that. Surely she could handle this. I can do it, she said firmly. I know I can. Linda smiled. I believe you. Now let's get started. The next 3 months were the hardest of Riley's life, and that was saying something considering everything she'd been through. First came the apartment. Linda took her to New Beginnings the following week, and Riley couldn't believe her eyes. It was a real apartment building, clean and well-maintained in a safe neighborhood. Her unit was on the 2nd floor, a 2-bedroom with a small kitchen and living room. Her roommate was a girl named Tessa, who was 19 and had a 6-month-old son. Tessa showed Riley around, explaining how everything worked. The laundry in the basement, the community room where they held parenting classes, the playground out back. It's not perfect, Tessa said honestly. The walls are thin and sometimes the hot water runs out. But it's home, you know, and the staff here actually care. They're not just checking boxes. Riley's room was small but bright, with a window that overlooked a tree. There was a bed, a dresser, and most importantly, a crib that the program provided. An empty crib waiting for Hope. Next came the job hunt. With help from Mr. Peterson at Morrison, Riley applied to 15 different places. Most never called back. A few rejected her after learning about her situation. But finally, a coffee shop called Brewed Awakening took a chance on her. The owner, Mrs. Rodriguez, was a small woman with gray hair and kind eyes. She interviewed Riley in a booth at the back of the shop. I'm not going to lie to you, Mrs. Rodriguez said. This job is hard. Early mornings, rude customers, minimum wage. But if you show up on time and work hard, I'll work with your school schedule and your parenting obligations. Deal? Deal, Riley said, shaking her hand. She started the next Monday, 4:30 in the morning, mixing coffee drinks and baking muffins and learning how to smile even when her feet hurt and she was exhausted. It was brutal, But every paycheck, small as it was, brought her closer to bringing Hope home. The parenting classes were every Tuesday and Thursday evening. Riley had been nervous about being the youngest person there, but there were actually 2 other teen moms in the class. They learned about feeding schedules and safe sleep practices and recognizing signs of illness. Riley took notes on everything, filling an entire notebook. The instructor, a nurse named Patricia, pulled Riley aside after the 3rd class. "You're doing really well," Patricia said. "I can tell you're taking this seriously." "I have to," Riley said. "This isn't just about passing a class. There's a real baby counting on me." Patricia squeezed her shoulder. "She's lucky to have you fighting for her." Riley visited Hope 3 times a week. Hope was thriving in her temporary foster home, but the foster mother, Mrs. Kim, was always warm and welcoming when Riley visited. "She lights up when she sees you," Mrs. Kim observed one evening. "Look at that smile." It was true. At 6 weeks old, Hope was starting to smile, and she always seemed happiest when Riley held her. Riley would sit on Mrs. Kim's couch for hours, just holding Hope, feeding her bottles, singing to her even though her singing voice was terrible. "You're going to be a good mother," Mrs. Kim told her one day. Riley wanted to believe it. But some nights, lying in bed in her new apartment, the doubts crept in. What if she couldn't do this? What if she let Hope down? What if she was just a stupid kid playing house? Those were the nights when she'd text Linda, who always responded no matter how late it was. "You can do this. One day at a time. Hope needs you, and you need her. You're stronger than you think." The home study was scheduled for mid-February. A social worker named Mr. Torres would inspect the apartment and interview Riley. Linda helped her prepare, making sure everything was clean and organized. The night before the inspection, Riley couldn't sleep. She walked through the apartment at 2 in the morning, checking and rechecking everything. Was the crib set up correctly? Were there enough diapers? Did she have all the emergency contacts posted? Tessa found her organizing the kitchen cabinets for the 3rd time. "Girl, you need to calm down," Tessa said gently. "I went through this same inspection 6 months ago. They're not looking for perfect. They're looking for safe and ready. What if I'm not ready?" "Are you kidding? You work full-time, take parenting classes, visit Hope constantly, and you're about to get your GED. You're more ready than most people twice your age." The inspection went better than Riley expected. Mr. Torres was professional but kind. He checked the smoke detectors, looked at the crib setup, asked about her support system and her plans for childcare when she was working. "You've done well here, Riley," he said as he finished his notes. "I'll have my report ready in a week." That week felt like the longest of Riley's life. Riley threw herself into work and studying for her GED test, trying not to think about what would happen if the report came back negative. Finally, Linda called. "Can you come to my office tomorrow at noon?" Riley's stomach dropped. "Is it bad news?" "Just come in. We'll talk then." Riley barely slept that night. She showed up at Linda's office 15 minutes early, her palms sweating. When Linda finally called her in, Riley couldn't read her expression. "Sit down," Linda said. Riley sat, her heart hammering. Linda opened a folder and pulled out several papers. Mr. Torres submitted his report. "And I have to say, Riley, I've been doing this job for almost 20 years, and I've never seen someone work this hard or come this far in just 3 months. But," Riley prompted because there was always a but. Linda smiled. "But nothing. His recommendation is approval. Pending a final review from the foster care board, you're going to be Hope's foster mother." Riley stared at her. "Really?" "Really." Linda slid the papers across the desk. "The board meets next Tuesday. Assuming no issues come up, and I don't expect any, you could have Hope home by the end of the month." Riley burst into tears. She tried to hold it back, but she couldn't. All the stress and fear and exhaustion of the past 3 months came pouring out. Linda came around the desk and hugged her. "You did it. I'm so proud of you." When Riley finally stopped crying, Linda handed her a tissue and sat back down. "Now, I need to be honest with you about something," Linda said, her tone serious. "This is just the beginning. Fostering a baby is exhausting. There will be sleepless nights and moments when you want to give up. There will be people who judge you for being a teenage mother. It's going to be hard, Riley. Probably the hardest thing you've ever done." "I know," Riley said, "but it's worth it." "She's worth it, she is," Linda agreed. "And so are you." The board meeting the following Tuesday was brief. Riley sat in a conference room with Linda, answering questions from 5 board members. They asked about her plans for Hope's care, her support system, her goals for the future. Riley answered honestly. Yes, she was young. Yes, she'd been homeless just months ago. But she'd found stable housing, steady employment, and she'd completed every requirement asked of her. More than that, she loved Hope. She'd loved her from the moment she found her in that alley. The board members stepped out to deliberate. Riley and Linda waited in tense silence. 10 minutes later, they returned. Miss Brooks, the chairwoman said, the board has voted unanimously to approve your foster placement of the minor known as Hope Doe. Congratulations. Riley felt like she was floating. This was real. This was actually happening. 3 days later, on a sunny Friday afternoon, Riley stood in Mrs. Kim's living room, holding Hope's diaper bag and trying not to cry. You ready? Mrs. Kim asked, smiling through her own tears. She'd grown attached to Hope over the past 3 months. Yeah, Riley said. I'm ready. Mrs. Kim brought Hope out, dressed in a pink onesie that Riley had bought with her first paycheck. Hope looked at Riley and broke into a huge gummy smile. There's your mama, Mrs. Kim whispered, kissing Hope's forehead before handing her over. Riley took Hope in her arms, and everything else fell away. All the fear, all the doubt, all the what-ifs, none of it mattered anymore. She had her daughter, and her daughter had her. Let's go home, baby girl, Riley whispered. As she carried Hope out to Linda's car, Riley thought about that night 3 months ago, finding Hope in that alley, cold and alone, running through the streets with nothing but hope that they'd both make it through. They had made it. Both of them, and this was just the beginning. The first night with Hope was nothing like Riley imagined. She'd pictured something peaceful, rocking Hope to sleep while soft music played, both of them drifting off in perfect harmony. Reality was different. Hope screamed from 11 at night until 2 in the morning. Riley tried everything. Feeding her, changing her, walking her around the apartment, singing to her. Nothing worked. The baby just kept crying, and Riley felt more helpless with each passing minute. Around 1:30, Tessa knocked on the door in her pajamas, her own baby son on her hip. You okay in here? She asked over Hope's wails. I don't know what I'm doing wrong, Riley said, tears streaming down her face. She won't stop crying. Tessa came in and looked at Hope with experienced eyes. She's not crying because you're doing something wrong. She's crying because she's a baby, and that's what babies do. Here, let me show you something. She demonstrated a different way to hold Hope, tighter with more support, slightly on her side. Almost immediately, Hope's cries lessened to whimpers. She likes to feel secure, Tessa explained. Some babies need to be held really snug, and sometimes they just need to cry it out a little. It doesn't mean you're failing. Riley took Hope back, copying Tessa's hold. Hope fussed for another few minutes, then finally blessedly fell asleep. Thank you, Riley whispered. That's what neighbors are for. Tessa smiled. You're going to have a lot of nights like this, but you'll figure it out. We all do. After Tessa left, Riley sat in the nursery's rocking chair, holding sleeping Hope, too afraid to move in case she woke up. She watched the baby's chest rise and fall, still amazed that this tiny person was hers to take care of. We're going to be okay, Riley whispered to her. I promise. The next few weeks were a blur of bottles and diapers and sleep deprivation. Riley would work the early shift at Brood Awakening from 5 to 10, rush home to take over from the babysitter Linda had helped her find, spend the afternoon with Hope, try to study for her GED, then collapse into bed only to wake up every 3 hours for feedings. It was exhausting. Some days Riley felt like she was drowning. But then Hope would smile at her, or make that cute little cooing sound, or fall asleep on Riley's chest, and suddenly everything felt worth it. Mrs. Rodriguez at the coffee shop was understanding about Riley's new situation. When Hope got sick with a cold and Riley had to miss 2 shifts, Mrs. Rodriguez didn't fire her like Riley feared. Instead, she said, family comes first. We'll manage. The GED test was scheduled for late March. Riley studied whenever Hope napped, reading textbooks while bouncing her baby on her knee. The night before the test, she was so nervous she couldn't eat. You've got this, Tessa told her. You're one of the smartest people I know. And you basically raised yourself while in foster care. If you can do that, you can pass some test. Riley wanted to believe her. The test was 4 hours long. Math, reading, science, and social studies. Riley's brain felt fried by the end, and she had no idea if she'd passed. The results would take 2 weeks to come back. Those 2 weeks crawled by. Riley tried not to think about it, but it was always there in the back of her mind. What if she failed? What would that mean for her and Hope? Finally, the email came. Riley was at home with Hope when her phone pinged. She stared at the message for a full minute before opening it. Congratulations. You have successfully passed. She'd done it. She had her GED. Riley let out a sound that was half laugh, half sob. Hope, who was doing tummy time on a blanket, looked up at her with wide eyes. Mama passed her test, Riley told her, scooping her up and spinning around. Mama graduated. She called Linda immediately. I knew you would, Linda said, and Riley could hear the smile in her voice. I never doubted you for a second. You should be so proud of yourself, Riley. That night, Tessa organized a small celebration in the community room. A few other mothers from the building brought snacks, and they all toasted with juice boxes. It wasn't fancy, but to Riley it felt like the best party ever. Speech, someone called out. Riley stood up, holding Hope against her shoulder. I'm not good at speeches, but I just want to say thank you. 6 months ago, I was sleeping under a bridge. I had nothing and nobody. And now I have this beautiful baby girl in this apartment and all of you. I don't know what I did to deserve a second chance, but I'm not going to waste it. Everyone clapped, and a few people wiped their eyes. Later that night, after Hope was asleep, Riley sat at her small desk and filled out an application for community college. Linda had told her about a program that would help pay for classes. Riley wanted to study social work, to help other kids like her who'd fallen through the cracks, but that was the future. Right now, she needed to focus on the present. The present was hard enough. There were difficult days when Hope wouldn't stop crying, and Riley felt like the worst mother in the world. Days when money was so tight she had to choose between buying diapers or food for herself. Days when she saw other teenagers her age hanging out and having fun, and she felt a pang of jealousy for the carefree life she'd never really had. But there were also beautiful days. Hope's first real belly laugh. The first time she rolled over. The way she'd grab Riley's finger and hold on tight, rocking her to sleep while humming the same lullaby Riley vaguely remembered from her own early childhood. One afternoon in early May, there was a knock on Riley's door. She opened it to find Linda standing there with another woman in a business suit. Riley's heart sank. Had something gone wrong? Was someone here to take Hope away? Riley, this is Judge Morrison, Linda said. Can we come in? Judge Morrison? Riley's mind raced as she led them into the living room. Hope was napping in her crib, thank goodness, Miss Brooks, Judge Morrison said, sitting down. I wanted to meet you in person. I've been following your case since you first applied to foster Hope. Is something wrong? Riley asked, her voice shaking. Wrong? No, nothing's wrong. The judge smiled. Actually, I wanted to discuss Hope's permanent placement. Riley's heart stopped. You're taking her away? No, dear. The opposite. Judge Morrison pulled out some papers. Hope's biological mother officially terminated her parental rights last month. That means Hope is now available for adoption, and given your exceptional performance as her foster mother, you have the first right to adopt her yourself. Riley couldn't breathe. Adopt her? But I'm only 18. Age isn't the only factor we consider. You've proven yourself capable of providing a stable, loving home. You've completed all requirements, held steady employment, earned your GED, and most importantly, you've bonded with this child in a profound way. Judge Morrison leaned forward. I won't lie to you, the process will take several more months. There will be more home studies, more interviews, more paperwork. But if you want to legally become Hope's mother, we can start that process today. Riley looked at Linda, who was smiling through tears. It's your choice, Linda said. No pressure either way. But you should know I think you'd make an excellent mother. You already are one.